Hello, everybody, and welcome to part two of the LeanTossup Week 5 College Football Podcast. Part one, if you're listening, will already be in the feed. You can listen to that one. That's where we talk kind of about the week that happened. We recap last week, the stuff that happened, what we thought was going to happen, if that happened or not. Spoiler: most of it did happen. Some of it didn't happen, but some of it did happen. Now we're going to talk more about the week that's up to come, and we're going to talk a little bit about some more stuff from last week. So I'm joined as always by my co-host at BuckMetrics on Twitter. How are you doing today?
I'm still great. Yeah, and since you mentioned it, if somehow anybody's listening to this that doesn't follow me on Twitter, please do so at Buck Buck Metrics Metrics.
Yeah, I've got to plug the Twitter handles more. Obviously at Lean T Sports. It's Lean Toss Up Sports. If you search Lean Toss Up Sports, it's Lean T Sports because they apparently Lean Toss Up Sports is actually taken by someone. I don't know, but it's like an inactive account. So like I want that eventually at some point. I'm coming for that account one day. But then also if you want to follow me personally, I'm at Robert Merton LT. I believe it's yeah. I think it's yeah, at Robert Merton LT, no underscore, just LT, capital LT at the end. So yeah, follow me on Twitter. Follow all of us on Twitter. We post stuff about college football and funny memes and all that stuff. But I'm also have funny politics memes too, so you can follow me for that too. So actually, just a quick side note about that too. For those of you who I've talked a little bit about Call of Duty. A new Call of Duty League season will begin in early December. They're actually starting it early this year. Usually they immediately avoid football season, but they're actually starting it early this year. So that will be back in December. So keep an eye out for that. And if you are worried about listening to it because you're like, I don't know anything about Call of Duty, don't worry. We make a ton of football analogies. Basically, Ryan, my co-host there, we make a ton of football analogies. So if you don't know Call of Duty, come on, don't worry. Come on down. We make a ton of NFL analogies. Like we compare a lot of teams that like half the teams are Dallas Cowboys. It's fun. Don't worry about that. So, but anyways, part two of the college football podcast. So let's start off with this week's Narduzzies. And there were quite a lot of them this week, I have to
Yes,
say. Not just one. We got a couple of them this week. So what are the Narduzzies this week?
yes. Well, as a reminder, the Narduzzi's are performances that leave us with a lot of pointed questions, just as Pat Narduzzi loves to do. First question, and I want to remind you that there are two parts to this question before you just blurt out an answer. Is Mel Tucker killing the monster extension for all but the absolute elite proven championship head coaches? Now, bear in mind,
Yeah,
there is the coach part of that, but the other counterparty is athletic directors
exactly. Yeah,
who,
see,
the more we go on, the stupider and stupider they prove to be.
that's the thing, right? Because when you said don't immediately blurt out the answer, I immediately wanted to say no, but then I thought about it, and no, you're actually right because the thing of it is, you like these guys, and especially their boosters who talk to them a lot, and I think in some cases, cough cough Auburn are running the program.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna be like, oh my god, he went 10-2. He's amazing. He's the best coach ever. We have to lock him. We have to give him in 5 years from now with inflation $200 million. We have to give him that amount of money, and that's the thing, right? And this is the problem. You're gonna see that, and people are gonna be like, "Oh my God, you have to do this because he's so good, right?" And then next season he's gonna go 4-8, and you're gonna be like, "Oh damn it, we offered him all this money now," and this
Yeah.
is the thing. I think
Oh,
like
not offered, guaranteed.
guaranteed. That's right. It's guaranteed, right? And the thing of it is, I would say no, but then the second I like when I was thinking no, guess which one NFL coach who has ties to college I immediately thought of?
Urban Meyer?
Not Urban Meyer. No, current NFL head
Oh,
coach. Cliff
who would that be?
Kingsbury. I was immediately like, oh,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
they've given him a monster deal. Now, to be fair, they're an NFL team. They have more money than God. They could do if
Yeah.
they want to get rid of. It doesn't matter. But some of these schools like actually have budgets that are real, so like they actually can't do this. But like the Cardinals could be just like, yeah, sure, fine, whatever, you're gone. We don't care. But like if you're a college football team, you can't just do that, right? Like if Kyler Murray like gives like Cliff Kingsbury the side eye, he's gone. Like it doesn't matter. But like you
Mm-hmm.
can't do that here in college. So no, it's I think they still will, but see, I think some try to do it as a desperation, right? Because I think they think they like, oh, we have this amazing coach, right? And if we don't give this extension to him, he's going to leave, right? He'll go to another good school, right? So we have to give him this extension, even though he's not actually that good. Like, I feel like in a lot of cases, it's like this false market that's been created, and that's the problem. This Mel Tucker thing, it should do it. Now, to be fair, now, again, he has, as you pointed out, he actually was basically kicked out of Colorado and is now here. We should give him some more time, right? Give him, like, yes, it's not looking good this year. It's not looking horrific, but it's not looking good. If it looks bad next year, yeah, okay, I'll be the first one there demanding his head. But at the same time, still should give it a little bit more time. But it definitely trends bad. It looks like they got lucky in a down year for the Big Ten, which it was a down year for the Big Ten, and they got lucky with Kenneth Walker. And now that
Hmm.
he's gone and not running for 200 yards a game, oh no, now we actually have problems. Now we actually have to do other things on we can't just be like, well, we can't just run for 8 yards on first down. We can't do that anymore. That sucks. So this is the problem. This is the thing, right? So and sometimes one or two really good players can patch like just keep an entire program running. Like Bijan Robinson's literally just like for Texas, right? He's saving them, right? So yeah, I think the monster extension, I think for some schools, but for some schools that are kind of run by more boosters and not actual analytics guys, I think, yeah, that's when you're going to see those monster extensions.
I think that it's not killed, and I think it's because exactly how the process that we got to the specifically the Mel Tucker extension, not the James Franklin extension, but the Mel Tucker one, it does not go away in that a program who's basically second or third tier has some initial success and they will never ever ever be able to help themselves, especially if you have people that are writing big checks that demand it. I don't think we're going to get away from that. And that kind of brings me to another point you kind of shook loose from my brain there is I've been saying on Twitter for a while, and this is probably a good point, a good place to make that point. I think that the athletic directors or departments that are going to be the most successful ones are the ones that are able to actually reprioritize and say, we have a ton of television revenue. And you know what? If I have to tell one or two troublesome, meddlesome boosters just to shut up or sit down or stop writing checks, I'm going to do that because at this point, I need alignment and I need order more than I need more cash. And we just see an inability at some places to do that. And I think, honestly, I think that's why USC has made such a quick turnaround. Now they were able to make the right hire, but they made the right hire because the yacht basin idiots at USC were told to shut up and just write a check and trust me, and they got it right. And I think that's kind of the model going forward, as much as like throwing resources here, there, and 27 analysts and support staff of 100. Um,
Yeah.
Interesting discussion though.
It is, right? And I think that's the mark of a good athletic director. Like the good athletic director will say, okay, write a blank check to Lincoln Riley, right? But a bad athletic director will be like, okay, give Mel Tucker everything he wants, right? Like, and
Yes.
that's the thing. And or like, okay, give Brian Harson everything he wants, even though there's like literally no proven track record there. So
Yep.
and that's the thing, right? So and like in terms of Florida, right? Like they got rid of Dan Mullen, and like and God help, because like I read an article. Shout out to the Athletic. They actually have a lot of really good content, and now again, a lot of the guys aren't like completely and like. I like a lot of the writers, like Stuart Mandel, of course, but they have a lot of other writers, and I actually do view this as valuable because they'll bat around candidates for different jobs, and like, God help the person who wrote that they wanted Dan Mullen for the Georgia Tech job. I'm just like, no, like what, like, and like this is the thing, and you know what? Here's the thing. On one hand, it's like that is terrifying that is a thought, like that someone at Georgia Tech could be like, you know who we should hire? Dan Mullen. Like that's terrifying. But at the same time, though, like it's cool to see sometimes these conventional wisdom things, because like that's conventional wisdom. Right? This happens a lot in politics, where it's
Hmm.
like everybody thinks a certain thing should happen, and then because a lot of smart people think that thing should happen, then people do it, and then it actually turns out really badly. But a lot of people said like that was going to go badly, but then because some smart people said like, so this is the thing, right? So but the fact that Dan Mullen is still in the realm of possibilities of head coaching job is terrifying. But this is the thing. So, like, if you hire Dan Mullen, I don't know what to say. Like it's like, yeah, let's bring that horrid level of recruitment to our college. But yeah, no, I I think people will still make mistakes like this, and Mel Tucker, it's looking more and more like it. I think it still needs some more time. I'd like to see what they look like 3, 4 games into next year. Do they still look this bad? If yes, then okay, this was failure. This was a complete failure. But if it doesn't, like when I first saw that extension, I'm like, that seems a little because it wasn't. It was right before. Like it wasn't even at the end of the season. Like they would literally. They like it was the week before. It was like actually days before, I think hours before they got obliterated by Ohio State. Like did they start immediately regretting it when they got blown up by Ohio State? They're like, oh crap. Like why not just wait until the Ohio State until you play the best team in the league?
Hmm.
Like you just waited hours. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. That was crazy, but I think
Something to think about that too is
it is.
Dan Mullen is kind of an abrasive jerk at times, so maybe he rubbed somebody at the Athletic the wrong way, and they said, "You just wait, I'm going to put you up for the Georgia Tech job."
Yeah, it's like punishment. They're like he gets a call and be like,
Yeah.
no, I don't want this job. Like he just keeps putting him up to all these different jobs.
Uh huh.
I'd be like, you know who should take over in like Georgia State? Dan Mullen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's too good for him. It'll be like I don't know who's maybe if Joe Moorhead leaves, he'll get sent to Akron or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes or no, and then we can dig into this deeper in a subsequent. But I'm just curious where you stand on this. Can Tennessee make the playoff with that defense this year?
Ooh. See, that's the thing, right? You got Anthony Richardson, who is not a particularly good quarterback, depending on the day, throw for 400 yards against you. That's a yikes. That's a yikes moment there. Uh, I mean, at some point, defense doesn't matter if you could just score a billion points, right? Which is kind of what their plan is. That's their game plan, right? So, but at the same time, though, like Florida has not looked amazing on offense, and if they're scoring at you on at will, basically. Now, I do think Florida is probably better than advertised in some of these cases, but at the same time, though, like that's kind of terrifying, and I don't know. So I think maybe there's a chance, but their defense has got to get a little better. And I think it can get a little better, but it's going to have to get. And I think here's the other thing, too, right? Like Florida plays. No, they play Eastern Washington this weekend. So we're not going to find anything about that. But like if Florida starts doing better, then we might start seeing that as a mark of like, okay, maybe this Tennessee defense isn't that bad. Maybe Florida is actually not half bad, right? So but I think at the current rate, no. But if they can improve, like they're gonna have to play. Like they could still lose to Bama and beat Georgia, and I think win the SEC East, right? So there's hope for Tennessee. Like the Tennessee could get back to the SEC championship game, get to the playoff. I definitely think they could, but their defense has got to get better though.
I'm going to say yes, and maybe dig another more into that more later. All right, next one. Stay with me. This is a pretty big windup on this pitch. So I looked up a definition of a sociopath. You might know where this is going already.
Okay.
Um, a sociopath is a person who consistently shows no regard for right and wrong and ignores the rights and feelings of others.
Yes.
So I'm gonna bend that to college football and change that to a coach who consistently shows no understanding of the right and wrong play calls and ignores the skills and experience of his coordinators. And I'm gonna call that a Mario path.
Yeah.
So Mario Path, Miami had to pay $9 million to buy out Mario Path at Oregon, and then they gave him a 10-year, $80 million contract at Miami. So the question is,
Actually, and I'll add on to that. I
yes.
suspect there was probably a buyout of Manny Diaz as well in there too somewhere.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yep. Thank you. Good point.
A couple more million. What's that on top of that already? It doesn't matter.
So with all of these personalities and dollars, is it possible for there to be an intervention and somebody actually say, "Get out of the way of the offense, you idiot"?
I don't know. Maybe like that was really bad. Words cannot describe how bad that was. I saw there's a hilarious clip I saw on Twitter where the guy was breaking down some of the miscues, and the one on offense specifically, there was like a jet sweep where like the two players ran into each other. It's amazing. I watched that game, so I had Middle Tennessee State plus 25, 26, whatever it was. I can't remember, 20, 25, 26 and a half. And I was like, you know what? I'll bet Middle Tennessee State the money line, 16-1. Why not? So I come into the game a little late. It was 3-0 already. Middle Tennessee State got a field goal. Come into the game, and this game was already weird because there was literally a banner at the top that said we can only use certain camera angles because of lightning. And like I've never seen that before. Like I was seeing like there was like usually you get all the different camera angles and you're used to it. They just had this weird field camera and I'm like, what is this Bush League? What is happening here? Like what like fifth tier Fox network is playing this game right here. And it's like no, it's because they have lightning. They can't use the different cameras. I'm like, okay. So it's 3-0 and I see Middle Tennessee State punt. Like they're lining up to punt, they punt it away. And I'm like, well, it was fun. It was fun while it lasted, guys. Middle Tennessee State got up 3-0. And that was it. That was the fun of it. They'll probably let's hope they cover the 25 and a half, but it was fun. The lead was fun while it lasted. So I look at some other games. Then I look back at that game in the thing. Middle Tennessee State leads 10-0. I'm like, what? What is happening? How is this possible? And I'm just you just keep watching this and it just keeps getting worse. Like this wasn't like 10-0 wasn't the that was not the worst part of this. Like it just kept getting worse. And
Yeah.
like there's upsets of like epic proportions. Like and again, you think back to like App State versus Michigan. Last second field goal is blocked. Like okay, yes, you were a massive favorite and you lost in a close game. They gave you a good run. That's fine. And you know what? Yes, it's embarrassing that you couldn't, because I don't even know what the spread in that game was. That was way before my time. But whatever. That's one of the most historic upsets in college football. But, like, they got blown out as
Yeah.
25-point favorites. Like, I love games like that when it's like, it doesn't even matter. Like, one of the reasons I don't even know what the spread was, because it doesn't even matter what the spread was. Like, when
Yeah.
you're up 17 points, you're like, well, because, like, I was like, well, if they win this game, like, the spread's done. Like, the spread is irrelevant. I've won my spread bet. It's over. It's done. It doesn't matter what spread I bet. It could be +7. It doesn't matter. And, like, I saw like Miami was like it was at a certain point where Miami was just trying to get a touch like it wasn't even going to put them in the back into the game. It was just trying to get a touchdown on the board. They get stopped at like the goal line. Middle Tennessee State puts up a goal line, which again, this is not a Power 5. This is like a group of 5 team putting up a goal line stop against what was one of the most hyped teams in the country
Hmm.
against a quarterback who was hyped as a potential first round draft pick. Like literally 2 weeks ago, I saw someone saying that Pete Carroll might draft Tyler Van Dyke. That's literally 2 weeks ago I heard this. Gets stopped on the goal line at Middle Tennessee State. And then I see a 99-yard touchdown pass for throws it out of the end zone to a guy
Yep.
completely wide. Like, what happened? What was that game? I mean, I'm laughing because I have 16-1, but like, what was that game? Like, how was that? Like, it makes a lot more sense now how they lost to Texas A&M. That makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah.
But wow, just what a just insane game that was. And I can't like that has to be one of the craziest upsets. And again, like it wasn't even close. This wasn't like oh Middle Tennessee State winning on a game-winning like they won by like what
Mm.
17 I
Yeah.
think.
Or it's not like they held on for dear life after
No,
getting a big lead. It's
yeah
like they
they
kept extending.
yeah they kept extending. Like how do you like if you're Miami? How do you? I think they're off this week. I think like mercifully they're off this week. But like how do you come back from this?
I
How
don't know.
how do you
Yeah.
say well all right well that happened? Yeah, they lost 45 to 31. A group of 5 team put up 45 points on them and threw for what? How many? Let me call this up. How many yards was it?
Oh my God, it's over 400 on like
408
on 20
yards.
on 25 attempts. That's the
20,
crazy thing.
408 yards, 3 touchdowns on 25 attempts. Tyler Van Dyke, 138 yards on 32 passes. Jake Garcia, the guy he got benched for, 169 yards on 19 attempts, 38 rushes for 60 yards, 1.6 against a group of 5 teams. Like, what is happening?
Against a team, and I was looking this up, who gave up 548 yards to James Madison and only themselves got only 119. I was far too generous to the Blue Raiders in part 1.
Yeah, like just wow. Like and here's the thing, right? Like in part one, you tipped Middle Tennessee against UTSA. It would be even more terrifying for Miami if they lost to UTSA.
Yeah.
How like if they lose to UTSA, like it probably won't matter, but like they'd be like, oh my god, this is really bad now. Like they were clearly not prepared, and like I thought that like Texas A&M, that was gonna be like that was like the floor. That was like a pathetic Miami response. Like that would be the floor. Like the spread was 25 or something. Miami only put up 31. If Middle Tennessee State had just gotten one touchdown, they would have covered the spread.
Well,
Like,
and one of them was on a touch or a kick return.
yeah, like just insane. I I'm speechless as to how bad that was. Like,
Yeah.
I have no respect for this Miami team going forward, and I have serious questions as to like Mario Cristobal usually has this with Oregon, but the thing is, this has gotten worse. Like, there's been times when
Yeah.
they'll be like 25-point favorites against a team, and then they'll need like a last-second touchdown to win, or
Yeah.
maybe they'll lose by like a field goal, not by like 15 points. They usually don't lose by 2 scores. It's just crazy. Just wow. I cannot believe how far this has fallen. And like again, I don't know what my like I could see could he be on the hot seat next year? Like obviously he's gonna say, "Oh well, whatever. It's Manny Diaz's classes and blah 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 and all this stuff." Could he be on the hot seat next year? Like,
In year two of a $80 million contract? That's what I'm asking. Like, is there kind of has to be an intervention, and just because he's got a great staff. I like the staff. It's a good staff all around. I'm thinking the only solution is like the the football alumni is pretty big with that program. It's got to be like an Ed Reed that just says, "Dude, stand aside, go CEO, like go really CEO, like don't wear a headset, don't do anything, just smile on the sidelines and recruit. That's what you do the best, and coach the offensive line." That's the only way this works out. Is like, and it's not just Ed Reed. It's Ed Reed and like some of those real badasses from the '90s, just like those, like a Leon Searcy, like those scary, scary guys from the really scary Miami. Just say, hey, change your role. Just stop it.
yeah, no, it is that was one of the craziest upsets I have seen, and just the dominance of Middle Tennessee State against one of a preseason favorite to win the ACC and or make the
Yeah.
playoffs. Just insane. Wow, just speechless. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously I said a lot of words before, but mostly just speechless.
Yep. Definitely. That story's not going away anytime soon.
No.
I hope the Athletic has a really good Miami reporter because there's going to be a lot of good content coming from there.
Yeah.
All right. This one, I'm not picking on you. I'm just genuinely flummoxed. And so until we get an answer, I'm going to do the same thing.
Every week, run it back.
What is Florida? If
Yeah.
we're going to say what's their best game and what's their worst game and toss it. Their best game is the win against Utah. So we
Cool.
toss that. Is the worst one the win against South Florida? Or is it the loss to Kentucky?
I mean, here's the thing: Kentucky is 6.5-point dogs this week to Ole Miss, which is terrifying. And like, it's terrifying because I've actually already bet Ole Miss. Like, I don't think Kentucky is good. They almost lost to Northern Illinois.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they didn't even come close to covering that spread at all. Like, maybe it's Kentucky. Like, but USF also got obliterated by BYU in week 1, I think, or week 0. I think it was week
And
one.
Louisville,
And
41-3,
Louisville,
just
yeah.
last. Yeah.
Like USF is not good either. So like, could you maybe make the excuse that like, I guess was Florida looking ahead to Tennessee, and that's why the USF loss happened that way? I don't know. My model was weirdly like bullish on USF in that game, so maybe my model saw something that it was that other people didn't see. Like my model does see kind of weird things, like different mismatches on like pressure or stuff like. So maybe there was something weird, but I don't like it called that one, and then it also said that it was that Tennessee wasn't going to cover against Florida either. So I don't. Props to you, model, but no, I don't know what Florida is as a team. I just know that they have a good coach.
Well,
And
so what's our worst game though? Let's just kind of
okay,
play the game
let's
here.
get back
So,
to. I think Kentucky. I think
okay.
Kentucky, because it was
So
a really
then,
bad pick six. They could have won that game had they not been that
yeah,
horrible
that
pick
was my
six.
thought too. So then we're stuck with what's representative is that loss at Tennessee and then that win over South Florida.
Yeah.
Does that tell us anything about what they are? I don't. They're such a just an unknown. they're just so all over the place. We
Yeah.
don't know what they are still, right?
No, we don't. Like we don't. They're not a particular. They're not a like running quarterback team. They're not like Richardson's kind of okay at running the ball, not great at it. He's not particularly great at passing. They got a pretty half decent defense. It's not horrible. It's not great. It's not horrible. But yeah, there's no real identity to this Florida team, and I think they may not have one this year, and it might take another year, or maybe Napier will get his own quarterback next year, and maybe that'll be a difference. Or I don't know. I don't know. If
Well,
Richardson gets better as a passer, this team could be really good. But I mean, I think he still only hit what 50% of passes.
his QB plus at Tennessee was 170. It was his best game by far. And
Wow.
that's not even including he ran for like what, 70 yards, I think?
Let me just check.
Maybe even more.
I mean, he was 24 for 44, right? So like
But
that's
he had a very high per attempt though.
yes,
Yeah.
10.38 per attempt, but like again, like Hendon Hooker was 22 for 28. Like that's all like you missed 6 passes.
Yeah.
Richardson missed 20. Now he threw a lot more, and that's fine. And he ran for 62 yards, which isn't
Yeah.
bad, but like that accuracy's got to get up. Like this is college. Like you got to start hitting 60 here. Like you could hit 60, 70%. Like you got it. Now again, maybe he could develop more, maybe in a year or two, like maybe next year maybe next year we're talking about him hitting 70% of passes and we're like, "Wow, this Florida team is terrifying." But we're not talking about that right now, right?
Yeah,
So,
actually, when you talk about it, and I don't know if you remember this team because it was 10 years ago. So the USC team in 2012 was preseason number one, and they wound up 7-6. They were very explosive with absolutely no continuity. They would have games where, like, you know, literally they would have like 600 yards and 50 points, and then they would just have nothing at all. That might be the best analog, although we're getting there from a different starting position. Is just like because literally, I look at him, I think they could beat almost anybody, literally outside of Georgia and Alabama. I mean, it's not like they were hopeless against Tennessee. I I don't. If you told me Florida beat any team outside of the top three in the country, I could say, yeah, I could see that. I'd be a little surprised, but it's not like I don't believe you. They might be that team where like any result against almost any team is not a surprise and totally within a reasonable expectation any week.
yeah. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that makes sense.
weird, interesting. Just yeah, a lot of dots to connect for next season, let alone this season. Lastly, so before the season, I kind of liked Arizona, but I said that their new DC just wasn't ready. He was just a glorified position coach who was just known for his recruiting. So does California Golden Bears, who under Justin Wilcox don't like to play offense, if Cal scores 49 against Arizona, that does that inform just what Arizona is going to be at best, like 4 wins? It just kind of puts a limit on how much they're going to be able to outscore people.
Yeah, that was a weird game. So my model liked Cal in that game by a weirdly large amount, and I was like, "That's weird," because Arizona had beaten North Dakota State as a dog, and Arizona does some pretty good things so far.
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's weird," because Cal lost to Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not particularly good. Cal shouldn't be that good, but Cal kind of like blew them out in some ways. It was a pretty comfortable win, and yeah, like I was really confused by that number. But now my model is saying that Cal's going to lose to Washington State. So okay, well we follow the model, but no, it's and Cal losing not cover the spread. But no, there is maybe a bit of a ceiling here, and Cal. I think it's also Cal just being a weird team where Cal will do something like watch Cal will lose to Washington State, and then they're going to beat Washington. Cal will always beat Washington. That game is coming up relatively soon. I assume that's coming up soon. Let's see here. But like Cal is just going to be this weird kind of Jekyll and Hyde team. So while yes, that really kind of sucks for Arizona that they got good Cal. Um,
Hmm, yeah.
I think yeah, Washington's coming up late October. I just think that yeah, like it's weird watching this Cal team oscillate from like yeah we're gonna score 17 points against Notre Dame to 49 against Arizona. It's just a
Very different
fascinating.
defenses. Very different defenses, but
True, but like that's big
Yeah.
discrepancy. And I don't know. I mean, Arizona scored more points than Notre Dame, so whatever that means. But no, I
Mm.
mean, yeah. Again, maybe there's a bit of a ceiling there for Arizona year one. They can maybe get to a bowl, but it's going to be hard. It's kind of fascinating that we talked a bit about this, like the Arizona Kansas dynamic, and Kansas is like to the moon. Like Kansas is like one of those like Bitcoin stocks, and like it just keeps getting better every week. And apparently Arizona may or may not have found their ceiling here. So,
Yeah, so Arizona actually, now I kind of remember it, they've got two really soft spots coming up because they get Colorado. Actually, that's this week.
hmm
And they get ASU still. So there's, I think that's two wins that are just on the board already, right?
that's four. But then you've
Yeah.
got Oregon, Washington, USC, Utah, UCLA, and Washington State. You could
Yeah.
lose all those games. So,
Easily.
and man, that's a
You know
brutal
what? They,
schedule.
well, yeah, I would say they could probably outscore Washington State, but that's, and it's a home game, but still that's right before ASU, so that might be a little bit of a look ahead. But I think if that, weirdly, if they win another game and pull another upset, that might help them where they're looking at, geez, we can make a bowl if we win our last two.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see. Let's see what they can do. Maybe because if they get Colorado, like maybe Utah, but probably not Utah. Maybe maybe UCLA, not USC. Maybe UCLA and
That's
Arizona
at
State.
UCLA, which doesn't mean anything. That's
That
just
doesn't
going to
mean
be
anything. Just
empty.
for all 10 people there. Um, and then Arizona State. Yeah, not not.
I mean,
Maybe they make a bowl, but they're definitely underdogs. Like they'd probably be like plus 200 to make a bowl. But
that's a fair price. Okay. All right, you got a deeper dive on Ohio State?
yeah, so let's talk about Ohio State here. So last week, obviously, they played Wisconsin, and I was actually kind of bullish on Wisconsin. I thought that maybe Wisconsin could test them a little bit, and they did not. So now, at the time, like it was a bad call, but I do kind of want to make this really fascinating point because I looked into the numbers here. So Notre Dame versus Ohio State. So this is Tyler Buckner's stat line. This is Tyler Buckner still starting. Went 10 for 18, 177 yards against Ohio State's defense. Arkansas State, when they played Ohio State, the quarterback went 20 for 34 for 188 yards. Not bad. Toledo versus Ohio State went 10 for 19 for 153 yards and two touchdowns. Graham Mertz last week went 11 for 20, 94 yards, one touchdown, one interception. So he completed more passes than two of the other people Ohio State has played. Somehow was the only person who got less than 100 yards, actually less than 150 yards of all the quarterbacks they played. So Graham Mertz just was horrific. And this is the thing, right? And the central theme here is, has this Ohio State team actually been tested? And like they beat Notre Dame. Honestly, had that game gone on for another 10 minutes, they probably would have covered the spread in that game. Like if that game goes
Hmm.
for 5 more minutes, they probably would have covered the spread because it was 16. They only beat one by 11, but they probably would have gotten up to about 18 or so. They didn't cover the spread against Arkansas. They scored 77 to cover the spread against Toledo, 52 to cover against Wisconsin. Again, Wisconsin, like, yeah, they cover. It was an easy cover, but like, is it plausible you could see two more scores in there somewhere for Wisconsin? Maybe, but and they cover maybe, but still though, like this just still seems like a team that gives up a lot of unnecessary points, like 21 to Toledo, like even 21 to Wisconsin. Like, I mean, I obviously you have to let in some points, and Wisconsin runs the ball a lot. I think they had like 200 rushing yards in this game, or more than that. I think. Um, yeah, I know 192 rushing yards, 165 of those to Braylon Allen. But like, we're just at a point where like no one is really testing this team. No one is offensively strong enough to actually score points, and no one is strong enough defensively to actually shut them down either. Like I thought maybe Wisconsin could do enough, but their offense just completely let them down. Like you can't put up less than 100 passing yards against Ohio State. Like you need to pass to do this. And like this is
What?
the
Are you
thing.
sure about that?
You mean we can't just run the ball? We're really good at running the ball. We should just keep running the ball. Like, so they play Rutgers this year. I think this year they play Rutgers this week. I think the spread is like 40 or something. Just don't touch that at all. That's just ignore that game. Then they play Michigan State again, a team we're trending down on. I don't know what the spread's going to be there, but like like Ohio State's going to score a lot of points. Michigan State's going to score a lot of points. Then they play Iowa. Ohio State will score somewhat less points. Iowa will not score points. Then you have Penn State. Okay, this is October 29th. Actually, we keep circling that 29th day. There's a lot of good
Yeah.
games that 29th day. But like that's their first test. And again, Penn State, again, 11th place. Free mini rant here because we talked about the rankings last week. Penn State is now outside of the top 10. Last week, notable that they again did not cover the spread against Central Michigan, which is funny because another top 10 team, Oklahoma State, also didn't cover the spread against Central Michigan. So apparently, if you don't cover the spread against Central Michigan, that's top 10 material. So, like, Kansas, like right now on your bye week, just schedule a game against Central Michigan and don't cover the spread. If you lose against Central Michigan, maybe you're a top 10 team. Like, maybe you're top 5. I don't know. But, like, apparently it's a prerequisite to not cover the spread against Central Michigan to be a top 10 team, which is amazing. But no, like they'll probably beat Penn State, but that's probably their best test. But do I really trust Sean Clifford to beat Ohio State? No.
What would
North
you make that game at Penn State?
20 is probably too much.
Wow, I was gonna say 16, 17-ish.
Yeah, it's probably something around there.
Yeah.
And Penn State has a weird habit of covering spreads against Ohio State. They usually keep that game close, but they had Jahan Dotson last time, and that's the thing. They don't have him this time, so I don't know. I don't know. That could be weirdly close. I'll see what the model says for that game. That game's still a couple weeks away. But then, like, you've got Northwestern, they'll slaughter them. You've got Indiana. Indiana is horrific this year. Then you've got Maryland. Okay, maybe Maryland can do something, but Maryland could just be like, usually Maryland, like, it does horrible in games like that, so maybe. But again, to be fair, though, you've got Maryland and then you've got Michigan the next week, so maybe you could get a look ahead. But then you've got Michigan, who we don't trust now anymore. I don't like. I kind of think Ohio State's just going to sleepwalk to 12-0. And then you're gonna get what, Minnesota in the
Minnesota.
in the
Yeah.
Big Ten championship game.
That might be their best test aside from Michigan.
That's it though. And like again, like okay, yes we like Minnesota, but like again, how many yards
Yeah.
are they gonna pass against Ohio State, right? Like I mean that's the thing, right? They're like, okay, we're gonna put like 10 men in the box and then just deep bombs all game. Like they would probably scheme that up honestly, but like this is the thing. Like this could be a spot. Like because right now Ohio State is. If you look at the future, if you look at futures markets, I feel like they're way too bullish on this Ohio State team. So to win the conference, Ohio State is minus 250, which
Mm-hmm.
seems too high considering the fact that they could lose to Penn State or Michigan, or they could also lose to Minnesota at 10-1. They are CJ Stroud is plus 150 to win the Heisman. Caleb Williams is down to plus 600. I really like that at plus 600. Jalen Daniels is 25-1. That might be there too, potentially. But like CJ Stroud at plus 150, that's way too rich for my blood, I think. To make the playoffs, Ohio State minus 325. To win outright, Ohio State is 275. So that's somewhat better, but not good though. But like I get this feeling that this Ohio State team is gonna meet a decent team that will pass for more than 100 yards against them, and then they're gonna be in trouble. Like, do you
Hmm.
not feel that too? Like, do you feel that like there's a strategy of just scoring a billion points and then just not caring if they get scored on? Do you think that like I feel like at some point that's gonna stop. Like at some point someone's gonna be able to shut them down. It's probably gonna be like Penn State or something. Like, do you agree with that?
I I see it differently because I think their offense is otherworldly. Like we talked about in part one, they
Yeah.
have two receivers in my top 10, and one of those is not neither of those is Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think that how we kind of painted Tennessee as like they might score or outscore everybody, or they have a chance to outscore everybody. I think you kind of flip that narrative with Ohio State and say, who don't they outscore?
Yeah, that's true.
Um, what's interesting too is they're down. My guy has them at plus 220 to win the national championship. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But this is bad prices. They're still third behind Georgia and Alabama. Um, but that I think I got them at 440 before the season, so that's cut in half.
I think I grabbed them at like 3 or something. So I do have some Ohio State future, I think, somewhere. I'm not sure. But like I don't know. I feel like there's too much hype. Like when you're looking at like 250 to win the conference, two like they're just this feels like I don't like CJ Stroud plus 150 to win the Heisman. That seems
Yeah,
way too that's way
that's
too
crazy.
like you lose a game, all of a sudden you're not the Heisman favorite anymore. Like if you're undefeated USC and if you're undefeated USC with Caleb Williams, how does he not win the Heisman?
If he has one more game close to what he had in Oregon State, he's done.
No,
He's
that's true. And to be fair, also on the flip side, I think Oregon State's probably the best defense they've played. But Oregon State
yeah,
also
by
got
far.
Fresno got a lot of points on them too, though. I kind of want to say that that was one bad, weird, fluky game, and then we may not see that again.
That happens a lot to USC at Corvallis.
Exactly, right? So like
Yeah.
I kind of and I'm kind of more bullish on USC after that game because you know what? There's these super teams, and Ohio State is kind of one of them. And this has happened to Alabama a couple times where it's like they feel like they can destroy everybody, and then one time they play someone who's good, and then they lose, and then that's it. Like, and this is especially true in college football, especially when you're dealing with the SEC West, when it's like, cool, you could be like undefeated, and then you could lose to one team, specifically cough cough Auburn in the last game, and then you don't make the SEC championship game because Auburn was also undefeated, which is
Hmm.
insane, by the way. I think they're fixing that now, so thank God for that. But like, this is the thing where it's like I'd rather be on a team that's been tested if you have that tough game rather than a team that just blew out everybody and has never had to be challenged. Like
Yeah.
I don't like I think Notre Dame had tied Ohio State at one point. I don't think Ohio State's ever actually been behind. I don't think. Maybe there was a time when they were behind or tied. I can't remember, but like never seriously in trouble. But like I will take a team that's been they had to come back or like dig deep to find something. But this Ohio State team, they're just like, just go score 7 points, right? We've never been tested. It's fine. And it's like I worry about that long term. I feel like this team is way too inflated. I mean, hell, Alabama's been tested more. They had the game against Texas, right? Georgia also not been tested, but I think Georgia will be okay. But this Ohio State team has not been tested, and I worry about that a little bit long term.
Yeah, no, that's a totally fair point. It's kind of the same case you were making against Michigan, but with a better strength of opponent.
Yeah.
Not great schedule, but and it's not like they're blowing out great teams. They're blowing out okay teams.
Yes.
And
'Cause that's
at
the thing.
some point they haven't run into like an Oregon State who's going to say, yeah, you know what, we're just going to chop off one of your legs and see if you're really in a dogfight and you get punched in the nose, what's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, Wisconsin is like +7 at Illinois, like -7 at Illinois, which we'll talk about that later. But like, it's like I think what Oregon State beats Wisconsin right now, right? Like that's the thing, right? Oregon State's probably a better team than Wisconsin, and like
Yeah.
Michigan was. Yeah, that's a good point you made. Like Michigan was blowing out horrific teams. Like yeah, UConn, one of the worst teams in college football. Oh, Hawaii, another one of the worst teams in college. Like they were blowing out literally the worst teams. Like they were aggressively finding the worst teams in college football to blow out. Ohio State's like, yeah, we'll blow out like a MAC team. It's like not a bad MAC team, like a good MAC team, and like Notre Dame and like Arkansas State and now, but like someone's gonna stop them. Someone's gonna figure out how to stop them on offense because that happened last year. Remember that happened a couple times. That happened in Michigan in the Michigan game. That happened against weirdly Nebraska last year. Someone's gonna figure out how to shut them down and probably score more than 100 passing yards against them. And let's see what happens in that game.
Yeah. No, good point. I hadn't thought about that at all. I just kind of, like most people, have them just like, inked in to be, you know, 2 seed in the college playoff behind
Exactly right. And
SEC champ.
and like,
Yeah.
but like this is the thing, right? So say they're 2 seed. Say they're the 2 seed. Well, at that point, if they're the 2 seed, not the 1 seed, they could get lucky, right? It could be like, oh, cool, the 3 seed is Clemson. Congratulations, you get a free win, right? And at that point, it's like, okay, but then like, what's the spread against them in Georgia? Like, it's probably going to be like -3.5, Georgia -3.5, and then Georgia will crush them or something. Maybe.
Yeah, I'd have to see more
Yeah.
because um yeah, that Kent State game was kind of weird for Georgia, and that undoes a little bit of the superhuman aspect that we have attributed to Georgia in my eyes at least.
Yeah, that was a weird game, but probably
Yeah.
they'll recover. All right, now
Yeah, I don't think they're going to go 8-4.
no. All right, now this Syracuse one. You've teased this on Twitter. I think you've gotten some people's attention on this. Let's see your deep dive about Syracuse.
Yeah, so this is this long, slow road to where we are. Syracuse 4-0, and why I think this there's actually something here. So, some background on the head coach Dino Babers. He was the wide receiver coach at Baylor under Art Briles when it was absolutely peak Art Briles under Baylor, or Art Briles at Baylor. Pardon me. Then he got a head coaching job, his first one at Eastern Illinois, for 2 seasons, and he won the conference championship both of those seasons. Moved on to Bowling Green for 2 seasons. Had one division championship, one conference championship in just 2 years there. He had a quarterback in his second year that had a QB plus of 137. His offense was by far the best in the MAC and actually 18th in all of FBS. So, offensive guy, definitely proving that he can bring an offense to his team, which we love. Then he was hired to Syracuse, which is a really weird place for that crazy Briles offense to go to, upstate New York. Not really what you think of first when you think of Art Briles. So, what did he inherit? He inherited Eric Dungy, who before B.A. Babers came on board had a QB plus of 92. The offense was a plus 4.3, which is pretty good. Um, Pretty much the same, a little bit of, progress and regression in 2016, but nothing pretty big. 2017, Dungy actually fell to a QB plus of 75. The offense took a step back, and there was at that point, people forget this now. There was skepticism about whether his system would ever take hold at all in Syracuse. Then they had that great 2018 season when they won 10 games. They finished the season ranked 15th. They almost beat Clemson. They actually should have beat that game. Clemson was really lucky. But the thing that's weird about that is Dungy, that was his last year. His QB plus is only 104. The offense was actually a minus 1.2, which means they're below all of FBS offenses. And overall, they're a minus 1.8, yet they won 10 games. So this is kind of like we talked about in part one about how lucky Houston and Utah State were last year, and there was some regression. I think we saw an extreme case of that for Syracuse in 2018. And 2019 was the season where, hey, we had to prove a concept with Dino Babers. Their over under in season total started at, I think it opened at 5 and it closed at 8.5. And it did not go well. The next 3 years, we'll just call it the Tommy DeVito era. And if you know Tommy DeVito, that's kind of all that needs to be said. The offense was never above average in all of FBS. QB plus in those 3 years basically maxed out at 92, which is below average. Um, just horrible. So 3 years of that, I didn't know he was. I didn't really think he was going to make it to this season, to be honest with you. Basically, put that 2018 season so far behind him and just proved that success was illusory. Um, and we just didn't think that. I didn't think that they were going to be anything this season, especially on offense. So very mixed signals coming in. So to this season, so that's the head coach and the offense that he had kind of engineered to this point. So let's just kind of bring in the defense at this point. So Tony White is brought on in 2020. His background, he was a defensive back coach under one of my favorites, Rocky Long at San Diego State. Rocky Long is just one of the defensive geniuses, especially on the West Coast. He left San Diego State to go to Arizona State. He was hired as a DB coach there by Herm Edwards. It's a really good hire, who also hired Danny Gonzalez to be his defensive coordinator. Danny Gonzalez, now the head coach at New Mexico, and his defensive coordinator is Rocky Long. So kind of a tight little circle there. So Tony White definitely has his bona fides. um, so for the 4 seasons before Tony White comes on to Syracuse, Syracuse's defense is horrible. It averages a minus 4.5 in the BuckMetrics model, which is bad. Pretty much in the bottom third of all offense or defenses. Then his first season, they ended the season at the defense is a plus 1.4, which is a huge improvement. They actually peaked in week 6. They were at a plus 4.7. And I think first season COVID and weird things happen where just you miss guys, tons of guys at different periods. So there's some proof of concept there. And again, last year the defense ended at a plus zero point 0.7, but in week 6 they peaked again at a plus 3.4. So there's something going on there that he's basically really improved. And so you're thinking, well, Tony White at least has a handle on the defense coming into 2021, and more of his guys, and you kind of throw out whatever gains they might have made in 2020 because you know didn't have a great offseason to really learn it. 2021 is probably the first time you think they're going to take another step forward. So there's promise on the defense, and the offense is a train wreck. So how does that get solved? Um, well, coming into 2022, they do have some what would we say? Some wind in their sails in that they were very unlucky last season. They had almost 2 games of bad luck in 2021. So they figured to make some improvement just based on normal improvement that we see, a regression to the mean. Like I said, so now they have 2 full off seasons under Tony White on the defensive side. And coming into this season, they have among the top returning starts and among the top improvement metrics for all of FBS defenses. So they figured to take another step forward this season. But the offense is a mess. They're below average on offense overall. They have a low improvement metric on the offensive line, and Garrett Schrader's QB plus was 69, which is, pretty much at that point you're not going to be an FBS quarterback that's worth anything. But what do? They replaced their offensive coordinator. They had Sterling Gilbert, who ruined Texas and ruined South Florida, and they bring in Robert Anae. Robert Anae, who was he? He was the offensive coordinator at Virginia. He became available when Bronco Mendenhall retired from Virginia. And we mentioned this a little bit last in part 1 of this week's pod. Virginia's offense last year was a plus 6.6, which is not quite elite, but almost elite. Very good. And what do we see happening since he's left? Well, Brennan Armstrong had a QB plus of 135 last year, and this year he's down to a 46. We mentioned, I think that's like 4th lowest in all of FBS. On the other hand, Garrett Schrader, who was horrible last season, has a QB plus of 145 now, 16th in FBS. The offense is a plus 2.6, so they've improved by 3.7 points, which is very significant. They still do have some red zone issues. That's why that game against Virginia was close. They kind of get bogged down at times. Maybe they'll figure it out. I don't know. The defense is kind of where they were last season, but at least they're consistent now. They're much better than they were years ago. So I think you've got enough pieces, and you've got 2 good coordinators on both sides of the ball. So I don't know if they're going to win the ACC, but this is definitely a team that I wouldn't be surprised if they beat literally any team in the ACC. And as many warts as we see every week in supposedly most of the best teams in the ACC, you don't really see them with Syracuse. They don't have like fatal flaws. They've got areas where they're not great, but I think 8 or 9 wins is definitely within the realm here.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, right? You make the point about they may not win the ACC, but like, what team in the ACC would you be like, Syracuse can't beat that team?
I've got one, and I think I'm going to dig into that next week because there's one team that just is kind of set my hair on fire in terms of how shockingly good they are. Don't want to spoil it,
Okay,
but
I think I know what team
yeah.
that is. I suspect,
Okay.
from my metrics, I suspected what it is, but okay, I'll say my guess is it's Florida State, but
Yeah.
yeah, okay, okay. Wow, spoilers, guys. We'll talk more about them next week, but yeah, no, like Florida State's weird. Like that was one I didn't see coming, but like honestly, Jordan
You
Travis
couldn't. There's no way you could have. No
yeah,
way.
Jordan. Well, it's weird because I had forgotten about it, but like Jordan Travis, Jordan Travis has been amazing, but like Florida State was a team I weirdly liked betting towards the end of last year, and I'd forgotten that I did, and now I'm like, oh wait, that's right, I love betting on Florida State, and then like I had them covering against. Oh, that was a Boston College game, right? This week they played Boston College, right, and
Yeah,
just blew them
and
out.
it was never close.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I remember shutting that game off, and that's the thing, right? I was like, this is done. So yeah, no, like Florida State to win the ACC or Syracuse to win the ACC, maybe not crazy. Like Wake Forest is good on offense, but their defense is really bad, and it's kind of like mini
Hmm.
Ohio State in that way. And like yeah, like Clemson was able to like the fact is if your defense is so bad that you let DJ score 5 touchdowns on you, like I'm sorry, you're not gonna win the ACC. I'm sorry. And like that's the thing, right? So, but you do have to worry about NC State, but it is NC State. The implosion is coming. Not this week, I suspect. I suspect that they actually might pick off Clemson. I think that's enough for Clemson. Clemson's had a little too much time in the sun. I think their time is coming to an end. Fine, like it's like okay, everybody's like okay, they're gonna lose to Wake Forest. Then they don't lose to Wake Forest. Then it's like okay, now that fine, they'll beat. No, I think this might finally be their week now, but we'll have to see. I think Clemson could be in some trouble this week, so we'll have to see. Okay,
Yeah.
what? So I think last week you have here. I think for the games we pick, I think we went like 7-2 in these last week.
Yeah, at the ones not that weren't interspersed throughout, but where we just at the
Yeah,
end said, "Hey, what games do you like?" We went 7-2 against the number last week.
which is phenomenal, by the way. That's a really good record. Like if you're listening to this podcast, just bet. Well, maybe not do that now, but if had you bet those games, that would have been really good. And again, obviously, you should look critically at these, but yeah, like it's if you go 7-2, that's pretty good. So all right, so
Yeah.
what games do you got here? I think you've got four and I've got four here. So what do you got?
So a little bit of background. I mentioned this in part one. We're at the point where I've got a full data set enough to rely on. Week 5 is typically the first week where I will use the model, the in-season model for my plays rather than just stitching together this and that and what I think. It just is more follow the model blindly and make up fun little storylines around it. And week 5 is typically one of the best weeks we have because of that, because it's good at identifying a lot of imperfections in the market. And why do I bring that up? Because my first pick totally goes against the notion I had when I saw the matchups and before I had run the data to get my ratings for this week. Looking at the numbers, I initially loved Washington,
Yep.
and my model loves UCLA in this spot. Um, I kind of don't understand why, but they don't even have this as really even a one score game. They've got it's got UCLA by more than a touchdown, and so they're up to 3, I think now.
Yeah,
So
it's three now. It
I'm gonna
was
get
three.
greedy and it. Go ahead.
It was 3.5. It pinged 3.5, but today suspiciously the 3.5s are gone.
Okay, yeah, I missed that because I'm gonna try to get 3.5. It was at 2.5 when my guy first put it up. So it went to 3. I'm gonna try to grab 3.5. We'll probably make a half unit play on spread and money line.
Yeah, this was kind of the same for me too. I grabbed Washington -3 last week. I was like, this is great. I had Washington favored by multiple scores here. Run the model this week. This one jumped the shark on me. I've now got UCLA favored. So don't know what I want to do there. I regret not grabbing the 3.5. Might grab the 3. We'll have to see. Again, if we get Michael Penix over 2.5 passing touchdowns, like. And this is the thing. I watched a bit of that game because I actually had Michael Penix over 2.5. He didn't cash it last week. He came close though. But yeah, I think mostly just because it was such a blowout there against
Stanford.
Stanford. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm starting to think now because I had also bet against Indiana earlier in the week and or earlier in the day, and that was such a blowout. I'm honestly starting to think that maybe Michael Penix saved that. Like maybe he was the thing keeping that team together in 2020, right? He kept Indiana, made Indiana good for
Oh,
that
totally.
year. Got
Yeah.
injured the next year. Indiana has collapsed, and now Indiana is bad, but now Michael Penix might actually be pretty good. Now, to be fair, there's limitations of him. I don't know if he's going to be lighting NFL draft stock on fire. He seems to be much more of a pocket passer, doesn't seem to be the most mobile per se. Um, but I mean, there's still a market out there for some pocket passers. The NFL is going more to the mobile ones, like your Kyler Murray stuff, like your Kyler Murray, Mahomes, Allen, Tua. Like the NFL is becoming flooded with that. But I think like there could still be some groups there for a pocket passer. But yeah, I like Michael Penix. I'm actually kind of intrigued by him. He is. I looked him up. He's only a junior, so I think he would still have another year, and then he could potentially declare for the draft. So, yeah, he's actually a really good player. But weirdly, I like UCLA here. This is a Friday night game, and it's a late Friday night game. So if you are not doing
Yeah.
anything late on a Friday night, Uh, curl up.
Oh,
I don't know if.
I'm doing a lot, and it's all around this game. Believe me,
Oh, okay. Well,
I
sit
want to
on
see this one.
couch, blanket. It's becoming fall here in Canada, so not probably not where you are, but yeah, it's pretty get warm and sit there 10:30 at night Eastern, and yeah, enjoy the nice game. So yeah, I actually really like that play. I might jump in on that play too. All right, my first pick. Now I'm not sure if you're going to call me crazy or not, but in keeping on the fading Indiana trend, Nebraska minus 5.5. So I I think 2 weeks ago,
Wow.
yeah, I
Oh
know,
man.
hey man, it's gonna be a journey, but I think this Indiana team is really bad. I think this team is really bad, and I think that Nebraska, like you actually literally, you've vaguely gave me a good point on this. You literally said that there was a quote from someone on the Nebraska team after their loss to Oklahoma, where someone said, we're practicing tackling in practice." Like that might actually be positive regression. I've got Nebraska as just a better team here, and not by this margin. I've got Nebraska. I think I've got at least double digits. I think I've got it a lot. My model really hates this Indiana team. Yeah, I've got this almost 15. I've got this 14.9. I don't mind Nebraska here, and if you can get Casey Thompson over 2.5 passing touchdowns, I don't hate that either. I'm not sure if we'll get that line or not, but yeah, I think I know it's terrifying betting Nebraska. I know I am scared of it too, but Scott Frost is gone. Just no fear. Scott Frost is gone, guys. It's okay. He's not gonna he can't screw us over again. So yeah, I think we're gonna take Nebraska here. I think the like here's the thing. If this wasn't the Scott Frost Nebraska team, what's the spread in this game? Like if this is not people who have been snake bit by Scott Frost, what is this spread?
It's an unanswerable question. You can't. It is the brand.
That is
You can't.
true. So
Yeah, you can't.
I did grab this. I got this at 3.5. Then short money came into 5.5. But like, yeah, no, like it's unanswerable. But like, if this wasn't Nebraska, then the Nebraska, this is probably 7.5, maybe 10. Like, this is an Indiana team that just got blown up by. I think they lost by 21 to
Cincy.
Cincinnati, and I
Yeah.
think before that they almost lost to Western Kentucky. Like, Nebraska isn't bad. I think they're not a bad team. I think they need some help, and they got a week. They got a blowout against Oklahoma, and they got a week of practice to fix some things. And I think they might be ready for this game. I know it's terrifying, guys. I know, but you never know.
Y- That's what I love about week 5 is when we get data that totally contradicts what we think. Having said that, my model loves Indiana here.
Oh, okay.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you still have priors, or is this all current season in your?
I have like I think 1 week of
Okay. Oh,
mostly just because I haven't figured out, because the way I have it set up, it like has to take certain weeks from last week, so I from last season. I just haven't figured out a way how to delete that part of the code yet. This week I will do that. I just haven't figured out how to do that yet. So that's the only reason why it's not using this season. But again, that would include Nebraska's horrible loss to Iowa. So
I
that's not
was going
helping
to
Nebraska.
say, well, they actually played very well that game until they just, hey,
That's true,
guess
yeah.
what? They imploded on special teams. They completely outplayed Iowa that whole game. So maybe that's why we're different. I don't have that
Maybe.
in mind.
Maybe.
So
Mine's the hey, remember they almost beat Iowa that time. That's true. Yeah.
yeah. But it's your play. So the official play of the pod is Nebraska minus 5.5.
All right. Let's see.
Okay.
Let's see what happens here. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to make sure because totals move all around. I don't know if you can get this
I
quicker
have I
than
have all
me.
them up right now. Yeah.
Okay, Purdue at Minnesota. What do you have
50
for that?
52 52.
Wow, so that's come down. Okay, that's still a play for me. I'm going to take the under. My model has Minnesota as a fourth best defense in FBS. Um, I don't want to get too much in the math nerd side of things, but when my model identifies a particularly strong defense, and there's a margin that's, they'll just say around a touchdown, that's exceptionally playable, more so than if you have just a bad offense. And I'm not saying Purdue is a bad offense, but when my model says you've got some margin here and you've got a truly exceptional defense, which Minnesota is, unders do very well. So I'm not arguing with the model at all on this one.
Yeah, I don't hate that play at all. I'm not a huge unders guy, but I might. I'll see. I might take that. We'll have to see.
There's
Um,
nothing better that this is going to be my tagline. There's nothing better than betting an under.
that
It
is
is the
true.
most fun.
I mean, the thing of it is, this Purdue team has just massively underperformed our expectations, right? Like we thought
Yeah.
this team would be like actually pretty good, and it's been sad. Like we were so excited for Aiden O'Connell and passing touchdowns, and it's just not happening. It's sad. I'm quite sad about that, but
Yeah.
yeah, but it's okay. We got Minnesota though. We've got Minnesota. Minnesota's a fun team, and maybe they can do something against Ohio State. All right, next pick, my second pick. Again, we're going ugly with this one. Illinois +7 versus Wisconsin. So
I like it.
here's the thing. It's called gambling for a reason. Here's the thing though. Like I actually have this game as I think like a pick. I think basically the fact is I saw this line and I'm like, wow, that seems really short. What does my model have? And then I looked at my model. I'm like, wow, holy crap! I should probably bet Illinois. Um, I can't believe this is 7. But I think this is the nice thing about having a model, right? Because the model is able to look at Grant Mertz and say, "Wow, that was really bad." So I think you're really bad. So this is the thing. That's the nice thing to have. That's why we have the models for, right? The model is able to make these objective calls. Because like personally, I would be all over. Normally, if I again without the model, I would have been all over Illinois here. And I mean, Wisconsin. I almost pulled the trigger on Wisconsin, but the model's like, no, take Illinois. I was actually able to grab this at 8.5. Um, but I'm fine with 7 here too. I just, I mean, yeah, we're gonna be we're gonna be on Danny DeVito. That's a little concerning, but
Tommy, although
Tommy
he
DeVito.
plays like Danny. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
the best slip ever.
Yeah, that's makes sense. I made that straight. Yeah, I've got Wisconsin minus 1.2 points, which again, if they win by 1 point, that would be hilarious. But no, like yeah, it's scary that we're gonna be playing with Tommy, like betting on Tommy DeVito, but yeah, I mean, maybe things can happen. I don't know. This is just Wisconsin offense is bad, and I kind of think their defense is also pretty bad too. So, and this Illinois team is like not bad. Like they beat Wyoming, and like that loss, that win keeps looking better every week. Honestly, Wyoming's actually been doing things. So, I think that Wyoming win is actually helping them, and the Indiana loss that's pretty bad, but I think they definitely outgained Indiana too. So, yeah, I don't hate I don't hate Wisconsin here. Illinois here. I think we're gonna play Illinois and just yeah. I think I just love the ability to we can fade Wisconsin and we're getting a good price to fade Wisconsin. I think I'm gonna take it.
First of all, I'd like to point out the magic of numbers when we run a model to say, hey, Graham Mertz is not a very good quarterback. Glad we go through the effort to come to that conclusion. Having said that, this is pretty interesting. I'm going to read to you my top defenses in all of FBS at this point per BuckMetrics. Number one, Iowa. Number two, Alabama. Three, James Madison, which you've got that craziness of Middle Tennessee State, which is skewing that.
Hmm.
Four Minnesota. Five, Michigan. Six, Iowa State. Seven, Illinois.
Wow.
Yep. Yep. They have a new defensive coordinator, I think, this year, too. So, yeah, I like that play.
Yeah,
Definitely like it.
I think that's yeah. That's crazy. Their defense is that good. Yeah. But and their offense can do things like that Wisconsin defense, not nearly as good as I think a lot of people
No.
thought. It was like not 52 points against Ohio State. Like I thought they would have kept them to like 30 or something. Not, but
It,
that's another couple scores in
and
there. Yeah.
remember in the preseason when I made the case for under, I said when you have a defense that's that dominant, I had them I think second in all of football, and I think you had them like third. Just historically, when you lose that much off a defense that's that good, you're bound to take a huge step back, like literally just go back, you know, several tiers. So we're definitely seeing that, and there might be some value that that you're getting because the market's not really realizing what Wisconsin is, and more importantly, is not.
Yeah. All right. Next.
All right, my next one is, I don't know if this has changed. Louisville giving, I got 17. I think I saw the number go down.
Yeah, it's 15 and a half.
Yeah, and I think I might have actually gotten 15 and a half and just changed from when I wrote this up. Let me see. Yeah, I got 15 and a half. So at BC,
I've
I
grabbed this
mentioned,
too. Yeah.
yeah, in part one, I mentioned that BC's offense is a mess. Literally, the only offenses that BuckMetrics has them better for at this point, this is just a great company, is UMass and FIU.
Wow.
Um, this is kind of, I think Louisville is officially like what they call the good bad team, where they just like kick dirt in the weak sister's face, and this is a weak sister. So um, we might just see part two of what Louisville did to South Florida last week.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Louisville might not be able to compete with the best of the ACC, but I think they can definitely. Like again, Louisville has struggled a little bit this season. Can I see Louisville coming in here and just putting up a bunch of points against a Boston College team that can't stop them? Yeah, I can see that. That makes a lot of sense to me. I also have this. I also have this as a play. I think I have this as. Um, I have this definitely. I remember looking at this. I definitely have this over multiples, like all over the 17. I think I have this at like at least 21 or 28. I can't remember. Um, let me let me see here. Yeah, 20 points. 20 points.
Hmm.
30 to 10. So yeah, it's a play for me. All right. Next up, and this is the return of an old favorite. Michigan minus 10 and a half versus Iowa. Okay. So some people might say, are we really going to go back to this? And here's the thing. Yes, Michigan isn't good. Well, they're not that good. They did almost lose to Maryland, and somehow Iowa destroyed Rutgers. Fine. But Michigan is good enough on offense and good enough at defense that they should be able to crush this Iowa team. This is actually the exact same spread we saw in the Big Ten championship game last season. And I
Yeah.
think, if anything, Michigan has basically stayed, maybe gotten a little worse on defense, maybe gotten a little better on offense. Iowa has regressed about, I don't know, 3 decades or so on offense, and is still a good defense. But like, this is the thing. Like this is a perfect spot to say like Michigan, like I don't. This isn't like the old like. This isn't like when Michigan was playing, um, UConn or whatever. But I still think, because again, this is only like 2 touchdowns. Um, this is a definitely feasible. Like actually, this is a definitely playable game, and it's 10 and a half. I grabbed a 7.5 early. I think it's
Wow.
11 in some places. But like, this is the thing. You're looking at multiple scores against an Iowa team. Like, if Michigan scores 21 points, is Iowa really gonna be able to come back and make that a competitive game? Like, Michigan is just gonna keep scoring, and Iowa's not gonna be able to respond. I was just trying to think of like, I'm trying to think of this earlier a couple days ago. I was trying to compare to like think of what, like a comparison for Iowa, and like Iowa is like a worse Georgia. Like, their defense is good, but their offense is like, it's like Georgia if their defense was worse, but their offense was run from a playbook from the 1950s, which is fascinating because the 1950s are a time when like the forward pass existed, but people were still deeply skeptical of it, and that's kind of what Iowa's offense is, and that's like. It's funny, but it's so true. And like, yeah, Michigan minus 10.5 versus Iowa. They can't. They're not. That's too many. That's too few points for Iowa, I think.
All right, I'm gonna take a note here. Is that at Iowa?
Yes.
Okay. So Michigan minus 10 and a half, or is it 10?
10 and a half or 11.
Okay. So I would, number one, just like to mention to you that you can bet outside the Big Ten, but whatever you enjoy.
Oh, you're right. I
Um,
have picked every. Okay, well, the next one isn't a Big Ten game, so that's fine. But I have picked a lot of Big Ten games. Huh? That's weird.
I actually, my model has Iowa on this, and I really, I like this play because I hate it. This is where I look at the model and I just say, okay, you you have magic that I cannot see, dear model. I'm going to follow you and go with it. I also have the under here, but it's your play. So
It
the
is
play
my
of the
play.
podcast is Michigan minus 10.5.
All right, I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen? Iowa massive upset of Michigan. I mean, I don't know.
No. The
I don't.
worst thing is that we have to watch a typical Iowa game.
Yeah. Oh God, that's true. But the thing is, I think Michigan is good enough that I think it's fine. Like, I feel like this is an overreaction to Michigan doing not good against Maryland, but I think Maryland is actually like good, and Michigan was massively overrated. I feel like that's more of what this is, and then also Iowa massively destroying Rutgers. Because I think the Rutgers line was like an overreaction to Iowa being generally horrible. And I think, because like Iowa covered the spread against Nevada somehow, but then I don't know why that line was 7.5. Like that, the line with them versus Rutgers was super fishy. So I don't know why that line was the way it was. I didn't touch that. That looked really fishy to me, and sure enough, they covered that because Rutgers just couldn't score. So, but I think Michigan can score, and Michigan's defense is good enough that they can actually stop Iowa. Like Michigan's defense is better than Nevada and Rutgers, right? And Michigan's offense is definitely way better than Nevada and Rutgers, right? So, I feel like this is mispriced, but my models hated Iowa the entire time, so I could be wrong here. We'll have to see.
Okay, fair enough. Um, all right. My last one is I'm just going to ride the wave of numbers that I know are skewed, but I think that there's something here. I'm going to take James Madison giving 22.5 at home to Texas State. Um, Texas State might have a head coach who's kind of coming down the boulevard towards club hot seat. We'll put it that way. And James Madison is interesting. I think we're going to talk more about them in a subsequent podcast because there's just an interesting story and scenario that we might look with them. I think their defense is for real. Like I've said, that Middle Tennessee madness between what James Madison did, what Miami did, is really skewing the numbers. I said that they're the number 2 defense per BuckMetrics. They won't finish there, but I don't think Texas State gets north. I don't think Texas State will get into double digits here, and I think James Madison at home will enjoy running this one up.
Yeah, I think I've taken this one too. The thing about it is like James Madison, I loved them last week, and they went down early. Like they were
Yeah,
trailing that game. But I was watching that game and I was never really worried about it because I was like, you know what? Like they can come like a lot of weird things happen, like a weird interception or like a fumble or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. But I'm like, they're not playing bad. They could come back from it. And sure enough, they came back. Like, again, this is Sunbelt here. We're not talking like this isn't the NFL. like, teams can come back. And App State did that. And or sorry, not App State. James Madison did that against App State. And yeah, really happy with that. And I'm really a fan of this James Madison team. They've only been in the FBS for 6 games, five, 4 or 5 games.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm loving this team. This is a fun team. Give me this
it
this
is.
James Madison team. I love this team. So,
Okay.
all right, my final play here. Um, we're gonna go back now. We're gonna go to the Big 12 here. Um, this is 6.5 in some books, 7 in others. I got TCU plus 6.5 plus 7 versus Oklahoma. My model thinks this is like a pick, and Oklahoma has had problems in the past putting away TCU, similar to the way they've had problems in the past putting away Kansas State. I think we all immediately at the beginning of the season we thought, okay, this Oklahoma State team is a definite candidate for regression. We're like, all right, they were like basically Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams bailed them out of a ton of really bad situations last year. We're penciling them in for the regression, and we knew it was coming. And then they crush UTEP, crush Kent State, crush Nebraska, and I think we're like, huh, maybe they're not bad. But then sure enough, the first time they play someone who's actually remotely good, they lose, right? And I think Dylan Gabriel is really good and but their defense, like look, 41 points against Kansas State, 13 points against UTEP, that's not particularly concerning. 3 against Kent State, no idea what Kent State is doing. Nebraska, they crushed Nebraska, but Nebraska just fired their head coach. They didn't know what they were doing. But like you've got TCU, like TCU is an undefeated team. They're a little scary. they've done some things this year. Like that win against SMU, they scored a lot of points against SMU. They destroyed Colorado. They kind of exposed us that Colorado was bad early on, but SMU is definitely not a pushover. They beat SMU by more than Maryland did. I'm kind of thinking this Oklahoma team might not be good. Maybe we were right originally about Oklahoma, and I think we kind of deviated from that because we just saw them crushing people, and we thought, oh, this is Oklahoma of old. But like the second you play a half decent team, you start losing. That's a little concerning to me. Like again, like they only lost by 7, but like they were behind a lot in this game. Like they were behind basically from the start. A lot of the times, like they got it close at one point, but then they just kind of pulled. Kansas State just pulled away from them and could score at will. And I don't think Kansas State is that good either. So like yeah, I don't hate a TCU team here. This TCU team definitely has some identity problems, but I kind of like them against Oklahoma. What do you think?
You know, I didn't look closely at this game because I'm just in that now that I'm kind of have the model data, I just kind of go where the model flags me. It didn't have this as a play. It kind of has this in that secondary range now with the line move. This opened at 5, right?
Yeah.
And now that it's at 6.5, it's in that. Hey, take a look and consider it, and maybe make your own case, but it's not a definite play. Um, but what's interesting, I would have never guessed this. This just, yeah. Well, this is where the model has the magic that I just don't. The model actually has TCU, at home with the home field advantage, basically 2 points better. I would have never guessed that. Never
Hmm.
guessed that. What's really crazy is my model has the total at this at 68.8 and the market's at 68. Kind of weird to be right on a number that's that high.
Hmm.
Now, to your point, when you were making the case, I didn't even remember the total, and I'm thinking, well, it sounds like he's not believing the Oklahoma defense, right? And
Hmm.
as you're saying, I'm thinking, what's the total? And 68 definitely speaks to that because reminder, the average in FBS is 56. Now Oklahoma is going to goose that up, and so is TCU because they play with pace, but that's not going to make that much of a difference of 12 points. So I think that there's um, two good offenses and maybe suspect defenses. And I can see that this is not my kind of play, but I could definitely see that case. And rule of thumb, when there's going to be a complete shootout like that, just take the points.
Yeah.
Um, Boy, 6.5 is a number I just, I'd be kind of just sitting chilly and just kind of waiting to see if it would go to 7.
It's 7
Um,
in a couple books, I think.
okay,
I saw
yeah,
it. I got a 7 on Bodog. I don't know if it's 7 anywhere else, but I snapped up a 7 on Bodog.
okay,
But 6, yeah, I'd be a little worried about 6.5, but I feel much safer with a 7. So
okay.
that's definitely true. Um, so yeah, you actually have another. We have something else here. So you saying so here are some of the what are some of the games that our models kind of both agree on here in terms of plays here.
Yeah. So what I did was I said, where does my model and your model both have indicate a play by more than 7 points versus the spread, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So first one, Houston. Houston is giving 2.5 at home to Tulane. I actually have Tulane 8 points better, and you have them 5 points better. So that's a play for both of us. Ole Miss. I got that line. Scratch that. I got that one backwards. Ole Miss is actually giving points to Kentucky. Never mind. Mississippi State is giving 3.5 to A&M. Um, I've actually got them about 2 touchdowns better, and you've got them 17 points better. Now, of course, that doesn't account for all the weirdness that Jimbo seems to bring in his magic, you know, whatever talismans that he brings that just bring with them crazy points from out of nowhere. But definitely Mississippi State is a play there. Kansas is getting 3.5 at home against Iowa State. I've got them 4.5 points better. You've got them a touchdown better. So we agree on the Jayhawks there.
That one's a weird line to me. I don't understand why we're getting 3.5 with Kansas. I like.
Yeah,
I'll take that every day. I'll do that any day. I'll take that. Like, I'll love this Kansas team. And this Iowa State team's main accomplishment was beating Iowa 10-7. So, and they got pretty soundly beat by Baylor. So give me Kansas here all day.
yeah, agree. Um, Duke is giving 2 to Virginia. I've got Duke 14 points better. You, you've
Yeah.
got them 35 points better.
Yeah, that's a number. My model weirdly hates some teams. Like, it weirdly hates Iowa and, like, also Virginia and Texas. It also does hate Texas A&M too. So, but yeah, like, there's some teams that the model hates, and but yeah, I mean, either way, that's still value on Duke though. That's still value on the
Yeah,
2.5.
definitely. Um, Akron, this is something that I would have never caught. Akron's getting 6.5. I've got them 4 points better than Bowling Green. You've got them 10 points better. So that's a play for both of us. And lastly, we are a UNLV football podcast. They're giving 16 at home to New Mexico. I've got the Rebels 26 points better, and you've got them 31 and a half better.
Yeah, I that's 14 now actually. So that's even moved in our direction. So I lay the 14 there. That's a Friday night game as well. So get some nice Friday night college football action going.
Yeah.
Um, you've got Tulane there, obviously, if you want to play on Middle Tennessee. Obviously San Diego State, Washington, UCLA at 8 or 10 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific, and then New Mexico versus UNLV. Actually, that's 14.5 now in my book. That's at 11 Eastern for the Night Owls among us. Um, yeah, those are. I will say my model feels. I feel like my model in many ways is like much more willing to call for a blowout, and like it's not afraid to say like, yeah, they're just gonna win by like 4 touchdowns, and I think that's good in some ways. I feel like some other models, yours model isn't really a this doesn't affect yours as much, but I feel like a lot of other models are much more tepid to call for blowouts. But mine is like, yeah, no, this is a blowout, and I like that about them. Like, if your model can't say this is a blowout, it's a blowout. Like, if a game's a blowout and you're like, this is like a 7 point game and it's like 30, like it's like 21, then that's a problem, right? Like, that's the thing. So
Yeah. That's interesting you mentioned that because that's one of the things where I wind up overriding is, it'll favor, like, I think it actually liked Massachusetts this week. And I'm just like, no, you're not understanding that people take pity on UMass. I'm not going to chase
yeah,
that bet.
it's like, oh, it's UMass is 60 point underdog. I'm like, no, it's not. They're not gonna keep doing that. The interesting one last week was actually interesting. It was Temple versus was it UMass or UConn? I can't remember which.
UMass.
UMass, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like my model had Temple as a massive favorite, and the spread was like 9.5. I'm like, that's way too few points for UMass.
Hmm.
Like, anytime you can lay it, like, I mean, UMass Temple obviously not a good team, but like anytime you can just lay a small number against the worst teams, just do that.
Yeah.
That seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's about it for this week. Hopefully our picks there at the end. Hopefully they all go well. Um, some other ones, obviously, but we'll kind of leave it there. Like, I like fading Texas is never a bad thing. Fading Clemson is cool too. But yeah, I think, yeah. Any other picks you have, or nah, you're good, I think.
No, I'm looking forward to Friday. I forgot that UNLV is a Friday night game too. Those are two
Yeah,
two fun games.
I think pretty much you can make a case for all 5 of those Friday night games. I think those are all really awesome games, and I think that's pretty gonna be make it pretty exciting Friday night. Normally you don't get good Friday nights, but some good ones this Friday. So,
Yep.
all right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Next week, we'll be back again next week. However, though, I think we're going to be on. We're going to be. We usually record on Tuesday. The stuff comes out Wednesday morning. I believe we're going to be recording Wednesday night next week. But don't worry, we will be back. But yeah. Other than that, enjoy your week and good luck, everybody. And we'll see you next week.